Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Sister Circle. And so we are so excited today just to chat with you again. You know, we meet every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And really it's just a group of us talking about a topic. And so as we're preparing for our guests to join on, we just want to give you just a couple of heads up that, you know, our Facebook and YouTube, we are able to see those comments. So as comments come in, we definitely encourage you to ask questions, give us any feedback or any comments that you have and things that you've been experiencing. And so as we wait on our guest to arrive, we can definitely be asking her those particular questions. So really where we want to start off, we just felt like this topic was really just an important topic for us to have a conversation about. And we're dealing with COVID. So I did a little bit of research and it said that 1 in 5 or 1 in 4, just depends on which article you read, but 1 in 4 adults are dealing with some form of mental health and, you know, dealing with some sort of issue. And so they did this study in light of COVID, right? And the coronavirus. They did this study that essentially said that were people having more symptoms of serious psychological distress now that we are in COVID than they did in 2018. And so are they experiencing more psychological distress now? And so what it says is that 13% of adults are experiencing, and it's not just regular psychological distress, but serious symptoms of it, right? As opposed to in 2018, it was only 3% were experiencing it. And so they said the highest groups among those were young adults, 18 to 29, adults with household incomes of less than $35,000 a year, and Hispanic adults. And so my first question just to the panel is, in light of COVID, and those of you that are listening that are out there, and what are some things that you all have heard from others as they are dealing with this COVID situation and their mental health?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I know a few of my friends, they're all loving being trapped in the house. I always say we all trapped in the closet. But I know a few of my co-workers, they were expressing themselves today. We had like a town hall meeting, and they were kind of expressing themselves today saying like, oh, when can we go back to work? You know, so some people it's actually kind of driving them crazy a little bit, you know, because they're used to, I guess, being social butterflies. And sometimes that can really, really affect you mentally by having to stay somewhere that you just really don't want to be in. Oh, okay. Sorry, I saw something. But yeah, so as far as my perspective on it and the people that I talk to and hang with, I really don't know of anybody that's having any big mental issues as far as I know, but I know I do reach out to my friends often and kind of check on them to see what their status is and kind of love on them a little bit through text message, you know, and kind of send them some encouraging words to make sure that they're okay.
Yeah. Anybody else? What when you talk to your friends or yourself, and in light of COVID, I think, and in this article, it talked about, you know, isolation, that, you know, this notion, because we just had an incident where Mark was out and he, you know, and found out that that somebody there ended up having COVID. And so now we had to self-quarantine for 14 days. And so really some of the things that we didn't necessarily think about, we're together. So we're self-quarantining with the 4 of us. But I talked to my mom who's by herself, and this notion of loneliness and isolation and being alone. And then the fact now that because of this, we can't even go over to her house, and we have to kind of self quarantine. That notion of what people are dealing with when it comes to isolation and loneliness. So have you guys heard anything as it relates to that?
Not in my immediate family, or even close friends. But like Erica, I mean, I check on them, but I think more so communication has been more for family members. I know for me personally, like our cousins, we have a whole thing happening on house party. And we really never talked this much. I would say on a monthly basis, let alone a weekly basis. So being able to check in with them and actually see faces has been helpful for me, especially because I am in another state and all my family is at home. So this summer would be the summertime is when I would go home to visit and be with them and spend time with them. So for me personally, it's been hard not to be able to go and do those things. But we do go. We were dealing with it. But as far as them reaching out saying, hey, I'm struggling, or no, I feel like we as a Black community don't really take mental health serious. So even if someone did say anything, it's like, oh girl, you all right. We brushed it off, which is why I felt this topic was really, really important for us to discuss.
Well, why do you feel that? Why do you think that? Why do you think that as African Americans, we don't necessarily, really view this as something that is a topic in our homes? I think even sometimes, because even with you all, like you mentioned that you don't have any personal friends and things like that, but you probably do, and don't even know it. People are out there like suffering in silence. Yeah. And really going through and really struggling, but they put on a face when they see their friends, or so. But going back to your point, as African Americans, what is it that why do you think that we feel like maybe this notion of mental health is shunned upon?
It was just the way we were raised. I know for a fact, not many people thought or talked about their true inner feelings. It was always suck it up, go in your room, you'll be okay. Yeah. And I'm not saying that my mom did that to me. But no, I mean, you just have to, it's kind of like just the community as a whole. When we're thinking about something in reference to mental health and needing somebody to talk to, it shows a sign of weakness. And I know for our people, and in my opinion, for our people, showing a sign of weakness is it's not acceptable. So.
Yeah. So somebody put in on Facebook that anxiety has spread because of a wide array of concerns, including uncertainty when it comes to normalcy and returning, right? Worries about contracting the virus and our loved ones getting sick. And they mentioned also the notion of this long isolation, right? And so I think people can handle a day or two, but this long isolation is where people are having some trouble. And then, just kind of this negativity. And if you watch the news, if you stay there long enough, you can, I know in my house, I'm like, well, just change the channel, because, it doesn't sound hopeful. If I watch it every day, it's like, okay, we got now 10,000 people have contracted it. And we were just talking before this, that when Mark said, that we had to self-quarantine, I never even got tested, because I was just telling them that, if I had it, I didn't want to know. I felt like that was gonna just create even more anxiety for me that I just didn't want to know.
Yeah. I'm kind of the opposite because I'm like, hold on, you coughing?
Right. Right.
You better go to the doctor. Let me get you an appointment scheduled.
Yeah, and somebody else mentioned going back to school, right? So,
Yeah.
and honestly, you know, especially for those, I mean, I think, and honestly, y'all, I think it's much more widespread than even this survey suggested. You know, because I really honestly feel like that. You know, I know it mentioned that those groups of 18 to 29 are definitely having, you know, some feelings, partly because that they, you know, that's a group that definitely does well with communicating and being in a group and things like that. And so, you know, they're having some difficulty with this. But I just also think that, you know, people struggle and people don't talk about their struggle.
Mm-hmm. I have a friend who made a comment inside my watch party, and she was just saying that she agrees sometimes when you're, I guess, when you're at home, that you have to have to find times to detach yourself, I guess, from being in that situation of staying at home and being in a closed-in network. And I guess that's why I can I guess I can relate. I said I didn't really know of anybody that was going stir crazy, but then too, I had to think about my mom. Because sometimes, you know, I'll be sitting here, then all of a sudden my doorbell will be like, doo, and I'm like, who is that? And it'd be her. She's like, I couldn't stay at home not one more minute, like not one more second. So, and I'm all like, nope, stay at home. Don't go to the store. Make sure you let me know. I'll go pick it up for you. Yeah, I'm crazy like that. But I have to also think about her feelings as far as, you know, wanting to get out of the house sometimes, you know, and not just being kind of trapped up, and feeling, I guess, lonely. But me, I'm fine with it. I'm a loner. I'll stay in the room under my cover with my fan on, watch a movie and watch the same movie like 10 times. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's me.
But also, I think about the mental health of our kids as well.
Right.
And for me, who already has a child who has anxiety, this was not the best setup for them. So I have reached out to some friends of mine who are mental health specialists and coaches for children, just to see what else can I do. I've been trying to do some things, but just getting information for them, because I mean, they too have suffered through this time too, and I don't think we should take that lightly. And I think we tend to do that. We tend to dismiss their feelings, and I've learned not to do that because I feel like growing up, my feelings were dismissed at times. So I'm like, I'm going to listen to you. You have something to say. You speak your mind. You have a right to say how you feel as well, as long as it's not disrespectful. But then we have to teach them, you know, how to say things and how to communicate their feelings as well too. So I think that's something that we need to think about going forward, you know, as far as decisions being made about returning to school or not to return to school. We definitely need to consider their thoughts and feelings as well.
Love it. So we have we started just with a general dialogue of some of the things that we have. Aisha Holman here of Aisha Holman Family Services, and so we are excited to have her. And I'm gonna in a minute turn it to her just to give a little introduction of herself. So a little background: Aisha and I, we met at Dallas Theological Seminary. And she was from Chicago and I was from New York, and so that connection alone here in Dallas was a kindred connection. And so I'm just excited to have her here as we are discussing mental health, and this is her, you know, her area of expertise in her field. And so Aisha, really just take a moment, just kind of introduce yourself and what you guys do over at your counseling service.
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me. So again, my name is Aisha Holman. I am the founder and CEO of Holman Family Services, which is a counseling center. We have 2 locations in Texas, one in Clarksville, Texas, and one in Irving, Texas. And we specialize in trauma. So we get a lot of the trauma victims, the people that you see on the 10 o'clock news, the stories that you read about, the stories we kind of gossip about at the water cooler. Those are the ones that we get. To be very specific, we work with a sex trafficking agency that helps to rescue victims from sex trafficking. We have a relationship with Irving Police Department, and we help treat a lot of the police officers that suffer from PTSD or have personal crises. We also work with a lot of domestic violence victims and suicidal teenagers. Okay. And then everything else we do in counseling as well, which is what we call the common code of counseling. My word, not a clinical word, but I don't like my boss today. My kids are getting on my nerves and my husband makes me sick. Okay. So we do all that stuff too.
All right, that's the good stuff.
That's real.
That's the day-to-day stuff. So I think just kind of, and the ladies will ask questions of you, but really I just kind of want to kick it off with, and like we said, we started off with COVID and anxiety and stress. Yes. And I guess my question to you is, one, I mean, I've read, that there's a difference between anxiety and stress
yes.
that I wasn't aware of. So if you'll share a little bit of that, but then also, what can people do as they're dealing with anxiety? And it could be related to COVID, but it could be, some underlying factors. So just in general, just share a little bit about that.
Okay, so 2 things. Let me help define anxiety versus stress. Okay, most of the time, please hear my words, most of the time, anxiety stems from a fear of the unknown. And so I can have an anxiety or panic attack while I'm comfortable sitting on my sofa watching a movie. And suddenly I can feel like I can't breathe. Something is pressing down on my chest. I've lost my breath. I feel a prevailing sense of overwhelming fear and uncomfortableness. I do not need a trigger. It can just happen to my body. Okay. And people who suffer with anxiety, it is a persistent state of anxiety. It is real. The worst thing you can say to somebody who struggles with anxiety is just get over it. Why are you exaggerating? What's wrong with you? Those are horrible things. That is the last thing you want to say, because the feeling of dying while I'm sitting at home comfortable is not something anybody wants to make up. Okay. And so stress typically can have a trigger. Stress can come from being overworked at a job. Stress can come from not having healthy boundaries, by always being a people pleaser. Stress can come from having multiple children, but not having any support systems. Okay. Stress will come from something literal, tangible, that's real, that if I were to remove from your life, then your stress would decrease.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So with that being said, Aisha, I'm gonna stay here. I know the other ladies have questions, but I'm gonna stay right here. So with that being said, at what point would you suggest that somebody come and speak to a counselor or reach out to a therapist? At what point should they be doing that? And then my second question is, I know as a Christian counselor, how do you kind of work with the realization of anxiety and the Bible talking about be anxious for nothing? How does that all work together?
I love it. I love it. I love that question. That is a great question. Okay, so number one, when should anybody go to therapy? Let me answer that question with a question. When should you go to the medical doctor? Let's make it very simplistic. Okay.
Regularly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I personally believe that everybody in the world needs a therapist. Everybody needs a therapist. Therapists need therapists. I was in therapy for 2 years. Okay. Everybody in the world needs a therapist. And so let me say it this way to make it very plain. We are comfortable. I'm not saying we like it, but we are comfortable with breast cancer. It's something that we talk about. It's something that we raise money for. It's something we have empathy for. Okay. We're comfortable with that. And we will go to a doctor that specializes in cancer. We will go to a doctor, a cardiologist that specializes in the heart, someone that specializes in lungs and kidneys and livers and all of that stuff. Well, if I had major surgery, I could have a heart transplant and live. I could live with one lung. I can live with one kidney. Can you live without your brain? Let's just think about that. Can you have a surgery that replaces your brain with another one? Your brain is the most important organ in your body, and it is the most neglected organ in your body. Your brain controls everything. I can't talk if my brain doesn't allow me to.
Right.
Okay. Well, you also cannot feel. You can't feel happy. You cannot feel sad if your brain doesn't allow you to. So when should you go to a therapist? Well, if you're having a persistent state of irritability, what does that mean? Many people in my family, and this is what it means. If many people in your family are telling you, you're kind of moody, or why are you always going off, or why are you always mad, or you feel like everybody is against you. You feel like your boss is picking on you for no reason, and you feel like all your friends have turned their back, and it's happening repetitiously. You're always in conflict with somebody. You need to go to counselor. Or if you're always sad, I just cry at the drop of a hat and I don't know why. And okay, I'm a girl, so I think it's my menstrual. But your husband has said you always sad. When it's your menstrual, when it's not your menstrual. Your kids are always walking on eggshells around you. You need to go to counseling. If you are the person in the family, and for African Americans, you know we have something called Black guilt or the Black tax. So if you are the successful person, you're the only child that graduated from college, or maybe you didn't. You're the only one with a steady job, and everybody comes to you to borrow money. Everybody comes to you to help them fix their problems. You are the one that everybody wants to talk to. They're always leaning on you, and you're running around like a little chicken with your head cut off trying to solve everybody else's problems. But you feel totally and utterly drained and unfulfilled and left out, and you feel like nobody checks on me, nobody's calling to see how I'm doing, but I call everybody else. Babies, that's a boundary issue, and you need counseling. Okay. So I want to answer that anxiety question with the Bible quote.
Yes, go for it. I want you to answer it.
Okay, all righty. So God does tell us that we should be anxious for nothing. Okay, that is very true. But he didn't say that the feeling of anxiety wasn't going to be there. Let that rest and resound for a moment. And let me take you to another Bible scripture to help you relax a little bit. Let's talk about Esther. Esther was supposed to go to the king and tell the king to save her people. How many times did Esther try that conversation with the king before she actually had it? It wasn't once. It wasn't just twice. Now, Kelly, you correct me. Was it 3 times?
That sounds about right. I feel like we get
about right.
Bible
pop quiz. We're back in Dr. Constable's class. Right. But so Esther had to go to the king, and she tried. Her dear loved one Mordecai was telling her, hey, y'all remember that famous line, you were chosen for such a time as this. We love tossing that out there. But you have to remember, Queen Vashti was executed by that same king because she did not do what he wanted her to do, present herself beautiful before him and all his homeboys when they were having a party. Y'all remember that? And all the men were drinking and she was beautiful. He said, come on and present all your beauty to us. Okay, so off with her head. Now, Esther, this sweet little young lady, is taken from her home, forced to marry the king. Mary, okay, Aisha's creative interpretation is she was unwillfully raped. Okay, she was forced from her home, taken to be married with the king, and then Mordecai says, Haman is coming to kill us. I'm gonna need you to go ahead and save the whole nation. Yeah, go on, Esther. Tell the king, your husband, since he like you so much, to save all your people. And she said, wait, huh? Who I'm supposed to do what? And he said, well, don't get up, don't get, the big head young lady. Remember where you came from. Do you think Esther had any anxiety? Do you think she was scared? Because she already knew that if the king didn't call her or reach out his staff towards her, that was instant execution. She couldn't just approach him all kind of willy-nilly. So yes, God tells us to not be anxious, but let's finish reading that scripture. He doesn't just leave us there. That's why God is perfect in every way. The scripture says, don't be anxious for anything, but by prayer and supplication, tell God about everything. And then he says to think on these things, and he lists out all the things you're supposed to think on. And at the end of that, he gives us a promise. And the promise is we will have God's peace. So it's not just don't be anxious, see you later. It is, this is how to get rid of anxiety, is what that whole scripture tells you.
That's good. That is
Does
really
that help?
good. That helps big time. Very good. Thank you. So we have a couple of questions on that they're typing in. And so one asks ways to relieve stress. And then another one asks, should we avoid places that cause us stress? Should we avoid like watching the news? What are your thoughts on those things?
Yes, I am a proponent of living life in rhythm. Okay. And so I'll start with the last question first. Should we avoid things that cause us stress? Yes, to a certain limit. For those of us who are adults, we have to live in the adult world, so we cannot bury our head in the sand. But you do not have to allow the things of the world, like the pandemic, like all of the information surrounding George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and we can just keep going, right? The names who made the news and the ones who didn't. You don't have to overly saturate yourself in those things. And so what I try to encourage people to do is watch the news in the morning for about 30 minutes, watch the news in the afternoon for about 30 minutes, but do not watch the news in the evening. Many of us make the huge mistake of watching that 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock news. And then what do? We go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got all of that uprising, all of that unsettledness resting in your subconscious when you're supposed to be sleeping and having peaceful rest. You're not going to be able to. So if you're truly deciding between should I watch the news and how much of it should I watch, as adults, we do need to stay aware. And so I think about 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon is enough. Most of the news just repeats itself anyhow. And if you need to take a break, then take a complete technology blackout. Now, with the exception of this show, make sure you tune into this one, okay? But other than this show, have a technology blackout. Okay, play some board games with your kids or play music, okay, with the exception of good, wholesome, encouraging, dance-worthy music. But everything else, just stay off of it for a whole day, a whole weekend even, and see how much your uncomfortableness, and I'll use the generic layman's term, anxiety, okay? See how much of that real layman's anxiety kind of subside when you give yourself a break from it.
That's good
Okay?
stuff.
And
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
the other question was how to avoid stress. Well, here's the thing. You can't avoid stress because we have no control over other people. The very word self-control means I cannot control anyone else. I do and can control myself. So because I cannot control anyone else, that means I can't control what you're going to say to me, but I can control how I respond to you. I can't control the person that's going to run the stop sign or the person that's gonna flick me off, flip me the bird while I'm driving, or race up behind my car and try to make me drive faster. I can't control that person, but I can control my responses to them. So can you avoid stress? If you already know that your mother or father-in-law is going to continuously make negative conversations, then let's keep those conversations to the minimum. If you already know that your boss likes to pick and poke at you, then let's not bring up any reasons why your boss even has to come to your cubicle. If you already know that someone in your neighborhood or your family is a negative person and they're going to do negative things, then let's make the interactions with them as minimal as possible. So yes, in that regard, if you know people are messy, stay away from them as much as you possibly can.
That's true. That's facts. Anybody else from the panel? Any other questions that you have? I didn't want to hog it, but anybody have other questions?
Well, not in reference to stress. I put a question in the chat. Did we want to go to that now? Or
yeah, we can go anywhere.
Okay. So my question to you today is mental health considered a genetic condition, allowing the trait to be passed down the family line? And if so, how can we break that trait?
Okay. All right. Excellent question. So remember, mental health is the healthiness of your brain. And like any other organ, anything within your genetic chromosome can be passed down to someone else. Okay. So that answer is yes, because mental health stems from the brain. Okay. All right. And so how can you break that genetic trait? Well, you can't necessarily break it. Like, I can't stop being Black. There's no breaking that. I was born this way. Okay. But what I can do is the same as if there's a genetic history of cancer in my family, or if, let's use this, if there's genetic obesity in my family. What I can do is recognize if I eat the same way they ate, then I'm going to die the same way they died. So I can make some changes. So if I know there's a genetic history of bipolar or genetic history of schizophrenia and those types of things, I can start getting pre-screened now. Gotcha. I can go to a neuropsychologist, and if you call my office, I'm happy to give you her information. She's fabulous, and she's a Christian. And I can go to a neuropsychologist and have some psychological testing done. A neuropsychologist is different from a traditional psychologist. Okay. And so I can have the specialized testing done to see if I have traits for dementia, to see if I have traits for Alzheimer's, to see if I have the traits for being bipolar and things like that, if you know you have a genetic history of it. But the question is, do you know? Most of the time, we don't like talking about diabetes.
Yeah.
Now, Big Mama and them ain't going to talk about whether or not somebody was schizophrenic. Come on.
No.
So if you know that Uncle such and such was just a little off, let's start asking some questions to find out what was in our gene pool.
Okay.
How early is too early to be screened, or how early could you be screened?
Okay. So if you have no signs and symptoms and your life is going well, I would say wait until past the age of 25. Why do I say that? Because your frontal lobe, believe it or not, is not fully developed until between the ages of 22 to 25. The frontal lobe manages all of your balance, control, but most importantly, the ability to gauge danger is right in that frontal lobe. And that's not fully developed until 22 to 25. So if you're going to do a pre-screen, I would wait until after your brain is fully developed first.
So what about with children, as far as mental health being recognized in them? What is appropriate for them to be screened, or how do you go about noticing or picking up on things, or
Okay, sure. Great question. So with children, let me say this again. Remember, my first answer said, if you have no signs and symptoms and your life is going fine. then wait past the age of 25. Okay. If you have signs and symptoms, and how would I even know if I have signs and symptoms? You have people around you telling you different things. The question is, do you believe them? Now, if you have multiple people from different avenues of your life telling you, girl, you always going off on somebody. Well, baby, there's a problem. Okay. So if you were talking about children, what has your child's teacher told you? And I don't mean one teacher out of first grade through eighth grade. It should be appearing in multiple classrooms. You should be having that. There will be multiple teachers telling you similar things. And please, parents, don't say, well, they just don't like my child. No. Teachers have several. By the way, y'all, I was also an educator before I became a clinician. So teachers have a large bulk of their education in psychology. Okay, there's a large chunk of classes they take in that area. And so teachers know they can't diagnose, know they can't say this is exactly wrong, but they will say, something's, we need to have this child evaluated. Something's going on. If you're getting that repetitiously, then let's take them into a therapist. Okay.
That's good.
So is there a statistic that mental health or mental illness affects certain races or genders over another?
Okay. So I saw that question lined up and I thought to myself, whoa, boy, y'all put me on the hot seat with that one.
I'm sorry.
No. So I am going to be very Bible in my answer.
Okay.
God created humans. Okay. God created humans, and in his perfection, he allows us to be man and woman and multiple ethnicities. So in that and of that, no, one particular race is not lesser or greater than another when it comes to mental illness. Everything can and does happen to everybody. Now, that's on the genetic creation level. Now let's talk about circumstances of events. If you have a particular population of people that have endured or suffered from something atrocious continuously, from one generation to the next generation, to the next generation, to the next generation, can there be a pervasive sense of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that can develop? Yes. And so if we just, let's just talk about outside of the US really quickly. If we have people that are escaping to the US, to Canada, to Europe, wherever they're going, because of their country is war torn and they've been victims of war crimes, and women are not respected whatsoever. And I'm not just talking about the Eastern countries, y'all. This happens in a lot of other places outside of the US where people have to escape. Well, will they be paranoid, which is a diagnosis? Yes. But can they overcome that paranoia? Yes. Because now they're in a place of safety. The paranoia was birthed out of something that legitimately happened to them. So if I always think that, okay, when you see me and look down, don't look them in the eye because they could attack you, then I'm going to teach my child that. And she's going to teach her child that. And she's going to teach her child. Do you understand what I'm saying? How it can be taught. It's not genetic. It can be taught by behavior, because we're talking about ethnicities at this point. We're not talking about some malfunction in the brain where the brain has an injury and that genetic trait can be passed down. We're talking about from the creation of humans and how humans through typical living can pass down learned behaviors. Do I need to say that again, or does that make sense?
No, that's good.
Okay. So we're talking about learned behavior. So if I am whatever ethnicity, let's just take the 5 large ones. If I'm Asian, if I'm Anglo, if I'm African American, if I am Italian and Hispanic, let's just take those. And if I put one person from each race in the exact same scenario, where they have to grow up in a war-torn country, they will develop the exact same mental illness. Does that make sense? So it's not genetic based. It's not skin based. It doesn't matter the color of my skin.
Yeah.
What matters is, what has my environment been like?
So
And
Aisha,
how am I socialized?
with that being said, so one of the things that we've taken in our family is the ACE study, and I'm not sure, I don't know if you're familiar with the ACE study, but basically it talks about that there's these 10 types of childhood traumas, and how those childhood traumas impact the life that and that people have, right? And so my question to you, and it kind of aligns with basically what you're saying here, is how has childhood traumas, growing up in a home where, you know, somebody was an alcoholic, growing up in a home where maybe there was some domestic violence, or a home where you know, the way that people talk to you was not encouraging. How do you think, how is childhood trauma playing a role in people's mental state?
Oh, great question. Excellent question. So the first 5 years of a child's life is the most crucial. Okay. So if you guys want to do some research, just toss out some stuff for you. Look up Erik Erikson's lifestyle development. Okay. And what you're going to read are the stages of developmental growth, the healthy stages of developmental growth of where we should progress. And the first 5 years of a child's life is the most crucial. That's where they learn security and safety. That's where they learn trust versus mistrust. Okay. All of that, what we call grounding, letting them know that they are okay and they're safe and they're loved, that confirming of their identity happens then. So if a child endures a trauma, major trauma, they're sexually assaulted, they're verbally abused consistently, there's extreme domestic violence in the home, or drug abuse, use, all that kind of stuff in the home, their sense of security and safety will have been broken. And so that child will consistently grow up to believe somebody's going to hurt me. I can't trust anybody. Trust versus mistrust. I can't trust anybody. Someone's always out to get me. And so when you are guarded, then you're always ready to attack. Okay. So when I see somebody that's constantly ready to jump and attack, my first notion is, we got a trauma victim. They've endured some type of trauma. Okay, so now let's talk about a child from the ages of 6 through 19. All right, now they're all not lumped together like that. I'm just kind of fast tracking because I'm graduated from a seminary, and like all seminarians, I can talk too much. Okay. So from a child that's a little bit older than that, trauma still impacts them. But let's say you have a child that spent the first 10 years being reared by grandma or grandpa or auntie or uncle or whoever that gave them a good, stable foundation. And then they got sent back to wherever, and that's unstable. That instability is not going to impact them as much. It will impact them, but not as much, because they had the first however many years of stability. Okay. Now let's talk about the reverse. The reverse is, I have instability at the I have stability at the beginning and instability going on. That's our typical CPS kid. And so there's instability or a stability at the beginning, meaning I'm safe at the beginning, or maybe everybody thinks I'm safe. And then all this crazy stuff starts happening. Well, then that child, when they get into foster care and all that kind of stuff, they start acting out, because they're just not sure. Their muscles, their bodies, their brain, everything is saying something's wrong, help me, help me, help me, this hurts, even if they're still in a safe place, because they don't trust where they are. So that child will start wetting the bed at 8, 9, 10, 12, 14. They'll start hoarding food. They'll start sexually acting out. They'll start verbally threatening others, or even pulling weapons, because they've been so traumatized, so victimized, that they believe I've got to always fight to protect me. Okay. So it takes years of therapy and a safe, stable environment to help them overcome that. And can they? Absolutely. I've worked with a lot of kids. Absolutely, they can overcome that.
That's good. So, so Aisha, we have some other questions out here, and I read a study that basically said that in I think 2018, only 11% of Black adults in the U.S. had any form of health insurance. So, when it comes to mental health and being able to get this service that that many so desperately need, and with only 11% having health insurance, what do we do with those with that situation? And I know even several companies don't allow you to go to a counselor or a therapist. So how do we help those that need the help but their insurance is not supportive?
Okay. So one of the things that my organization has done is we've always had a version of a scholarship program, but now we have formalized that. And so we have something called Holman Helps. Okay. And it's Holman, Holman, helps, like the word help, HELPS, and it's holmanhelps.org. If you want more information, please just call my office. 972-375-1200. We started a scholarship foundation just for that purpose. And we're not the only ones. There are other clinicians, churches, and private organizations that will help with the funding of mental health. Okay. And so for those people who do not have health insurance and they cannot afford a regular clinician's rate, the first thing I should hope you would do is reach out to your church. Because even if the church does not have its own counseling center, more than likely they will have a resource for you. And for any other churches that are listening, if you're unsure of how to do that, well, guess what? That's something else that Holman Helps do. That's how we got our facility in Clarksville, Texas. We partnered with the church that called us and said, we need help. I said, great, we'll come down, we'll open it up because I'm already licensed. It's not a big deal. It's real easy. We even go train some of their people to help belay. There are organizations that want to partner with the community, but the community have to be verbal enough to say, we need help. Okay.
Yeah,
so that's one.
So that's really good. Hold up, because that ties into that question that we started talking about it, but we didn't have you here. And so we want to be sure we go back and touch base on that question. But why do you think mental health is frowned upon in the Black community? And why people of color aren't seeking out that help and that support?
Yes. Okay. So healthcare in general is frowned upon in the Black community. Okay. So let's just start there. Okay. We will let our big.
But is it because of the 11% that don't have health insurance?
They're good. They just gonna pray about it and
yes.
Get some of that blessing oil.
Yes. And you know what? I actually consider that to be the biggest insult to God. It is funny how we think we can pray and ask God to pay our rent and pay our mortgage, but and then we go to work, right? We're looking for jobs. We go, oh Lord, help me keep this job. You believe he can do that. But when it comes to science, for some reason, we think that's outside of the wheelhouse of God. Like, oh, we just gonna pray about it. But I need you to have some actions behind that prayer, because God helps and heals through people here on earth. Right? Like, okay, so when grandma or whomever, they get sick, they go to the hospital, we pray, but we're praying over the medication. We're praying over the doctor. We're praying while they're in surgery. So yes, so please, Christians, pray as you are seeking help. Please go talk to your doctor. Please go talk to your therapist. Pray over the doctor and the therapist. Don't just leave it at the prayer. You need to put some feet to that prayer. So yeah, why don't we like mental health, or why don't we take it serious? If we just walk through a little bit of history, historically, we know that African Americans were brought to the U.S. Due to slavery. We didn't get the opportunity to migrate here like a lot of other nationalities. Other people voluntarily came to the U.S. We were forced. And in that forcing of bringing us into the U.S., we were not given the basic rights of humans, because we were not considered humans. We were considered cattle. And so we learned
So Aisha, you're breaking up on our end, and so what I'm going to do while she's working on that is I want to add just a way to kind of reach for those of you that are out there listening. Home and Family Services, and so here's a number. And I know Aisha talked a lot about home and helps, and just opportunities for those that that need to talk to somebody. Aisha, I don't know if you can hear us or if you're back. It's like looks like she still may be having some internet connection issues, and so while she's dealing with that issue, so to the panelists, I really just want to come back to you all. And in some of the things, what is it? Has anything just kind of stuck out to you that as you think about what she said, or any additional questions that that you may have that you would want to ask her? Feel free to, any just comments, thoughts from the panelists.
Well, just to give a thought, I wholly agree with what she was saying in reference to our community and how we frown upon not just mental health in general, but also the insurance aspect of not having insurance, and how we as our people, to me, need to get a little bit better about how we pray and what we're praying for in reference to some of our loved ones when maybe they may fall ill or something along those lines. But I disagree with what she was saying. And I think that she pretty much answered my question in regards to what her opinion is about the Black community and it being frowned upon for any type of mental health issue.
That's good. So
Okay, so
looks like Kelly
has matrixed on us as well. So until she comes back.
I'll for me, Kelly was asking, is there anything that we could take away? For me, I definitely agree with everything that was stated, especially the way in which we should go about seeking help and recognizing when we need to go and get help, and also, noticing it. I know that was one of Terrell's questions of how do we notice, if someone is dealing with some things, and how to be able to better help them and provide some resources to them. But I just have some, for me, I have more questions as to how I can be of a help. And I don't know why, but children keep coming to my mind as far as thinking about them and their mental health. And even though things can be passed down genetically, things that we can start to do now, just more resources that we can provide to those in our community, the Black community, minority community, any community in general. How can we better equip ourselves with being resourceful? And if that's just, just giving out a name, giving out a number, that's great. If there's something that we recognize ourselves, how in that moment could we help? I know we always go to, let's pray for somebody. That's something we can definitely do. But beyond the prayer, what could we do beyond the prayer that we can do to help one another and to help others? So welcome back, y'all.
Well, yeah, sorry about that. So we were about to have some trauma over here. Somebody that kicked the modem.
Can you guys see me?
We can see you. We was about to have a meeting with Aisha.
Look, I came outside. I figured I'd just stand in front of the tree if it's not working on this.
All right, sorry, y'all. Keep going. Go ahead, Aisha.
Well, I did catch part of the question, and it was about resources for kids. And so let me say this. Kim Johnson is the neuropsychologist, and she's located in Carrollton, African American female who is a Christian, and she is amazing at her job. She's been in the biz for at least 20 years, and that's who I refer to for all of my neuropsych work when I need it to be done. Okay, it's Johnson Neuropsychology in Carrollton. Other resources for kids, if you have basic Medicaid, my neighbor has a dog, I'm sorry. If you have basic Medicaid, you can call that 888 number or 800 number on the back of the Medicaid card and ask them for a list of therapists in your area. Just give them your zip code, and you can specify. You can say, I want a female, I want a male, I want African American, I want Hispanic, I need somebody bilingual who speaks sign language. You can ask them, and that's how we're listed by our skills and credentials, ethnicities. You can even ask for a Christian counselor, because we do list that as well in our applications to those insurance panels. Okay. If you do not have insurance, I strongly recommend you attaching yourself to a church, because churches have resources. And so if you ask I'm going to sneeze, I'm sorry. It's being outside.
Bless you.
Bless you.
But connect to your church and ask your church for resources, okay? If you are not affiliated with a church and you're trying to figure out how can I get some help for my family, Psychology Today, psychologytoday.com. And on Psychology Today, you will run into licensed counselors as well as licensed interns. Now, don't knock on the interns. An intern in the mental health field is the equivalent of a medical doctor completing their residency, okay? We just get the old word intern. Dentistry students, they get extern. And obviously medical doctors get residents. We just get the generic term intern. So sorry. Okay. So don't hate on the interns out there. They have passed their licensure exam. They've completed their in-school work. They just have to get those supervised hours. All right. So psychologytoday.com, Kim Johnson, neuropsychologist in Carrollton. Obviously myself at Home and Family Services. Information is right here on my t-shirt. Okay. homeandfamilyservices.com, and the phone number is posted. You can call the 800 number on the back of your Medicaid card. And if you have a private insurance like Blue Cross, United Healthcare, call the 800 customer service on the back of that card, and they can link you over to a therapist that fits the criteria that you're looking for as well. And if all else fails and you can't figure out what to do, how to do, and you don't even have any money, then call us. Because of COVID, Home and Family Services, we've been doing a very a special, okay, which is your first 3 sessions free if you are unemployed and you are uninsured, because COVID is impacting everybody, and we don't want anybody to feel like nobody is there to help them, because we are. Somebody is there, and we are definitely one of the many entities out there that will. Okay.
That's really good. So Aisha, as we kind of get close to closing out, just one last question that's on here that I didn't want to miss. And then, we're getting several comments about trying to have part 2 with you. So okay. People have so many questions, and you've just been amazing and helpful. So the last question for the night is, what are your thoughts on medication to treat mental illness?
Amen. Yes, I am pro medication. I am pro.
We're good. I'm looking for some.
Yes, I am pro medication. Let me phrase it to you this way. Again, your brain, can you live without it? No, you cannot. And so if you will take medication to decrease high blood pressure, if you will take medication to decrease high cholesterol, if you believe in going on chemo for cancer, please take your anti-anxiety, antipsychotic, and antidepressive meds. Please, it will help your brain. Without taking y'all through a basic, neuroanatomy class of the brain, but it's so intricate. And sometimes your brain can be missing one chemical, just one. If you don't have the dopamine or the serotonin that you need, and you're trying to figure out why you feel so lethargic and why, you're just so sad and it takes so much energy to get out of the bed, baby, your brain isn't producing the chemical. Well, guess what? There's a pill that can help with that. So yes, take your pill.
I love that. Well, that is, I felt like this was just powerful. So just a couple of quick announcements. Again, Home and Family Services, and the number is here. You heard just how dope Aisha is. And so if you're looking for someone just to talk to or some help, I really encourage you to reach out. Of course, Victory Baptist Church of Dallas, Pastor Mark, we are a place that wants to support. And if, we support just the spiritual aspect and the physical aspect. So if you need help on a physical side, home, rent, those types of things that impede your mental state, and we can help and connect you with the right resources, Victory Baptist Church is happy to support you through that. And if you're looking for a ministry to walk you through that, we would love to be a part of that. The other thing is just next Wednesday is our a moment of healing. So we're having a prayer and praise service with Lakewood Fellowship at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, and it's just an opportunity for two different churches to come together and serve the same God. And so we're excited about that. Aisha, we love you. We appreciate you. I'll hit you up again for the next Sister Circle, and then also for my own counseling session. I'll be
you get the graduated school BFF discount, girl.
I appreciate that. So ladies, we had a wonderful evening, and I thank you all. Those of you that are out there, feel free to contact any of us should you have additional questions or need help contacting Home and Family Services. We want to thank you all. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Bye. It was a pleasure.